Innovations to fuel and protect the planet. Ideas born in Israel that could help power the United States.
This foil shape here is meant to accelerate the wind coming into the wind turbine.
Almost like a funnel?
It's in a sense like a funnel.
The Cylindra fallout. Could its failure impact investment in energy solutions? We'll look at what it will take for the U.S. to compete in the global clean energy race. Plus, geoengineering, the push to prevent global warming with some radical ideas.
We're going to lose the Arctic if we keep going on the path we are and don't do something. We're losing it.
We'll show you some out-of-this-world technologies for controlling the climate. This is Energy Now. Hello everyone, I'm Thalia Ashuris. Welcome to Energy Now, a weekly look at America's energy challenges and what we're doing about them. Some of our challenges may well be met by innovations coming from one of America's most important allies, Israel, a country that for geographic and political reasons is focusing on non-fossil fuel solutions. Israel has emerged as one of the world's leading hubs for technological innovation. The Council on Foreign Relations says Israel has more startup companies per capita than China or India or all of Europe. And some of those companies are developing potentially revolutionary clean energy concepts, as Energy Now chief correspondent Tyler Souters shows us in our continuing look at the Israel connection.
Of all Jerusalem's holy sites, the workplace of an ancient priest is where inventor Daniel Farb draws inspiration.
Well, right, that's the location. It's built over the location where the Holy Temple stood.
And Ben Katina served there?
That's right. Ben Katin was the high priest at the time.
The time, 2,500 years ago. The man, Ben Katin, a Jewish priest and inventor of plumbing technologies. The machine, what Farb calls the Ben Katina hydroelectric turbine. Unlike the big hydro turbines, the ones that generate electricity from the flow of rivers, the Ben Katinas are awfully small. They attach to city pipes running on water systems, sewage flows, even rainwater. That means even landlocked cities, think of Atlanta or Phoenix or Dallas, they could produce emission-free hydroelectricity.
The important thing about energy and what we're doing is that there's a real need worldwide for every place in the world to advance to the category of being in a sustainable environment and sustainable production.
Since its founding, the state of Israel has depended almost entirely on imported energy, especially difficult given Israel's neighbors. So the country is searching for unconventional power sources and working with its closest ally, the United States, to bolster energy security.
There's nothing like confronting a challenge to force you to come up with new and better solutions.
American Andrea Yona is with a U.S.-Israeli governmental joint venture promoting industrial research and development.
It's forced them since the very beginning to think outside of the box, to be able to come up with solutions to challenging issues.
Over the last 3 years, the Foundation and the U.S. Department of Energy have given about $10 million to more than a dozen U.S.-Israeli joint clean energy projects. Projects involving solar energy, grid technology, biodiesel fuel development, projects for the energy challenges both countries face.
I think both sides by themselves can't do what they can do together. You know,
it's synergy.
It's wonderful synergy.
A synergy that could include what's just below the surface of the Red Sea off the coast of Eilat. Here, another Israeli energy innovation is beginning to take shape. And that shape looks something like a Lego.
We are assembling here inside the tower and the wind turbine on top of it.
Kobe Bernhack is one of the minds behind Ocean Bricks. These are just scaled down models. The real things are giant cement blocks, hollow so they can float, big enough to support a wind turbine.
Compared to the other systems, we no need to use the big cranes, the big ships, the all expensive diving.
Unlike wind turbines off the coasts of Europe or China, places where the turbines are attached to the sea floor, Bernhack says ships would tow the ocean bricks out to sea. Wind turbines already in place.
As I said, it's hollow inside. We open the valves here, controlling by computer, of course.
And down it goes.
And down it goes on the seabed.
And down there, once you plug in the turbine's transmission cables and the wind starts blowing, they start sending emission-free electricity to the power grid.
6 pieces like this are now sitting in the Red Sea.
50 meters from here.
And those 6 ocean bricks are playing another environmental role. To see for ourselves, our energyNOW team donned wetsuits.
It's a little tight. In places I don't want to show on camera.
And let ourselves sink into the Red Sea. The submerged ocean bricks, they can become artificial coral reefs, potentially replacing some of the natural reefs lost to environmental changes. Bernhack's company planted these bricks about 3 years ago, and the marine life in this corner of the Red Sea really seems to like the idea.
Cool.
Wind turbines embedded on those bricks, for now they exist only in computer animation. But Bernhack has a vision, and it involves the United States. If offshore wind farms ever come to the U.S., right now we're still only in the planning stages, Bernhack says ocean bricks will be the most cost-effective choice.
Only to build 1 megawatt offshore, and now price, the existing price is around $6 million.
And with your set, the price
We
would
can
be?
cut the price about $3.5 million.
Planting ocean bricks off the North Atlantic coast would be another example of the American-Israeli clean energy partnership.
Israel brings its innovation, its technology, its thinking out of the box ways, and the U.S. brings the ability to take those new technologies and bring them to market.
Exactly what Daniel Farb wants for his other clean energy ideas.
This foil shape here is meant to accelerate the wind coming into the wind turbine.
Almost like a funnel?
It's in a sense like a funnel.
That's just a model. This is the prototype for his more energy-efficient wind turbine design, the Wind Tulip. What Farb calls another example of Israeli innovation made for the U.S. market.
In Israel, there's a very innovative way of thinking, which to some extent you have on the West Coast as well. But here I'd say it's more scientific innovation, and it's more concentrated.
And maybe more inspirational as well. Farb is already scouting locations for his Ben Katina turbines in Jerusalem.
The holiness of the location helps inspire one to be more intellectually productive.
And you're seeing the results so far?
I hope so. I hope so.
In Israel, Tyler Suiters, energyNOW.
The projects you just saw are pretty much still on the drawing board, but at least one other has already made it to the U.S. Bright Source Energy, a solar company operating in both countries, is building the largest solar plant in the world in California's Mojave Desert. It's modeled on a smaller version in Israel's Negev Desert and is backed by a $1.6 billion loan guarantee from the Department of Energy, the largest amount the DOE has awarded to a renewable energy project. It's the same Department of Energy program that backed failed solar panel maker Solyndra. More on the Solyndra fallout a little bit later, but first, California is considered by many to be the nation's leading renewable energy state. And it's not just solar and wind. Companies there have been tapping power hidden below the ground for decades. Take a look at this Energy Then from 1958.
This is one form of thermal or heat power. But this is in California, USA, not Russia. In the Big Geysers area, 85 miles north of San Francisco, steam wells are test tubes for pioneering American attempts to tap heat and power that lie within the earth for producing electricity. Completed wells are valved and the steam diverted to horizontal pipe to await connection with the main line to a generator. Heat long trapped in the earth may be one answer for a power-hungry world where fossil fuels may run out.
Today, that part of the Mayacamas Mountains hosts the largest geothermal power complex in the world. It's home to 15 power plants owned by Calpine Corporation, which says those plants can generate enough electricity for 725,000 homes. Still, less than 1% of the electricity in the U.S. is geothermal, according to the Energy Information Administration. Coming up, at one time, even geothermal was a far-fetched idea. Could some more radical thinking yield the solution to stopping climate change?
if you could make these clouds denser and therefore brighter, whiter, they would reflect more sunlight.
Geoengineering ideas that could help the planet, but are they worth the risk? And how to pay for clean energy technologies that could also help the planet. Our guests mix it up over the impact of the Solyndra bankruptcy on clean energy investments.
energyNOW is celebrating its first anniversary. Thanks to you, our show now reaches over 150,000 TV and web viewers every week. From Washington to Beijing, from Houston to Tel Aviv, we tell you about new energy jobs, breakthrough technologies, climate action, and how to cut back America's dangerous reliance on foreign oil, which is costing our economy roughly $300 billion a year.
We've got to get on our own resources.
When are we going to make this jump?
But the in-depth reports you see on energyNOW also have a price tag. So to keep energyNOW growing, we want to form new partnerships with foundations and corporations who are equally concerned about America's energy future.
What we do right here has a direct impact on what happens here.
Join us in bringing energyNOW's message to more and more viewers. Please have your company or foundation contact us today.
When you throw away money on wasted electricity, you're throwing away everything you could have bought with it. Saving energy saves you money.
Other countries are subsidizing these industries much more aggressively than we are. Hundreds of billions of dollars the Chinese government is pouring into the clean energy sector, partly because they're projecting what's going to happen 10 or 20 years from now.
That was President Obama defending the Department of Energy's loan guarantee program. Now, that program is under fire for its $500 million guarantee to Solyndra, the California solar company that went bankrupt. Clean energy advocates say Solyndra's collapse should not lead to cutbacks in taxpayer support for renewables. But there are moves already in Congress to cut the DOE's program and other subsidies for clean energy. Well, joining us to talk about all this in our mix from Nashville, Tennessee, energyNOW contributor Amanda Little, author of Power Trip, the story of America's love affair with energy. And in Austin, Texas is Robert Bryce, a senior fellow at the conservative think tank Manhattan Institute and author of Power Hungry, the Myths of Green Energy and the Real Fuel of the Future. And welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Now, I want to ask you, first of all, for your reaction to the Solyndra collapse, actually your explanation as to why it collapsed. Amanda?
I think it was the victim of a big success. I think Solyndra, the failure of Solyndra and the other solar bankruptcies is a sign that the solar market has been maturing and that low-cost solar is winning out and high-cost solar wasn't able to compete.
Robert, makes sense to you?
Well, I think there are a lot of reasons why Solyndra failed. There are three other solar companies have failed in recent months as well. Look, the problem for not just the solar industry right now, but the wind industry, and even to some extent the coal and nuclear businesses right now, is not a lack of mandates or subsidies from the government. Rather, it's low-cost natural gas. Clearly, the price of natural gas is undermining solar, it's undermining wind, it's undermining pretty much every other fuel for electricity generation.
Let's move forward and let me ask you about what effect Solyndra's collapse is going to have on government and private investment in the future in clean energy and renewables. Robert, let's stick with you.
I'm bullish on solar, but I think the Solyndra bankruptcy and all of the politics that go with it are clearly going to hurt the government loan guarantees and so on here in the U.S. For the near term.
Amanda, do you want to jump in? Because Robert doesn't support subsidies. You consider this a subsidies race.
Well, I think that we have to look at two things. The markets have been working. The cost of solar has gone down almost fourfold since 2008. The number of solar installations in the U.S. has increased 70% in the last year. And the fact that Solyndra failed, I think, is in part evidence that the government is doing its job.
How is this country going to compete against China, for example, which has lured investment to the tune of $54 billion, and this country's at $34 billion. We're talking about lower labor costs, for example, in China, and low-cost loans.
It's so important that to point out, as you say, that China has been outspending the U.S. on clean tech 2-to-1 in 2009, and as you say, last year, $54 billion to our $34 billion. But not only that, they have been outperforming us on regulatory measures. They're very aggressively trying to push the growth of solar and wind in a way that we're not.
The idea that somehow we're losing to China is just plain wrong. It is not true. Look at what is happening in the natural gas business here in the United States. The shale revolution has fundamentally changed the global energy equation. The U.S. now sits atop more natural gas than we know what to do with. We're at natural gas prices of about $3.50. That's the problem for the renewable sector. They can't compete with low-cost natural gas.
Amanda, you were jumping in?
Yes, China controls or produced 50% of the world's solar panels last year. And they command, I think, half of the $45 billion wind industry. We produce 7% of the world's solar panels. So is China winning? Absolutely.
Why is it that we're so focused on protectionism when it comes to solar panels or wind turbines, but we hear not a word about laptop computers, cell phones, bicycles, tennis shoes? We import all those things from China, but somehow we're supposed to carve out a special area of subsidy and mandates for the American industry when it comes to competing with China for the renewable space. Why is that okay?
We invented the solar technologies that they are now manufacturing. We invented the wind technologies that the industries that they now command. And we all know that energy is the blood of the economy. And the energy is the blood of the economy and the blood of economic growth over the next century. So whoever commands that market is going to be creating jobs. 100,000 people are now employed in the solar industry in the U.S. And there are tremendous, the growth of solar in the U.S. is far more impressive than virtually any other sector in the economy. So it spells jobs and job potential.
The U.S. now gets at least 6,000 times more energy from coal, oil, and natural gas as it does from solar. But the idea that somehow we have to subsidize the United States solar sector so that we can compete with China, well, maybe I'm going to start producing cell phones here in the United States and laptop computers. So maybe I should get a subsidy and a mandate from the federal government so I can compete with China in those markets. How is this any different?
Well, I know that this is a discussion that is going to continue here on Energy Now, and certainly here in Washington. Thanks so much to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We wanted to get your thoughts on the Solyndra bankruptcy and its potential effects on the solar industry, and many of you told us on our website, energynow.com. We asked, what does the Solyndra bankruptcy mean for the future of solar energy? 52% said nothing. Not all companies succeed in a competitive market. 27% of you said U.S. solar companies need bigger subsidies to compete with firms in China. 13% said solar energy subsidies don't work. And 8% said the Solyndra bankruptcy has some other meaning for the solar industry. When we come back, we're going to take you out of this world. Technologies for cooling the planet that are not pie in the sky. But what some scientists claim will help keep the Earth green has some environmentalists seeing red. We'll be back in less than a minute.
Clean energy is a top priority with consumers and politicians across this country and throughout Maryland. And now there's an easy way to learn how clean energy can be a part of your life, in your home, at work, as a career. The Maryland Clean Energy Summit is your chance to get all the information you want, from solar and wind to thermostats and energy suppliers. The state's foremost clean energy leaders will be presenting at this Hallmark conference, so don't miss it.
Welcome back to an environmental nightmare. Scientists who warn about global warming have a long list of worst-case scenarios. Melting ice caps causing dangerous sea level rise, more frequent violent storms, wilder wildfires, and longer droughts. But other scientists say there could be ways to prevent such catastrophes, and they've got, quite literally, some out-of-this-world ideas. Energy Now's Josh Zepps takes us inside the fascinating and controversial world of geoengineering.
This is what the sky could look like every evening in what you might call a geoengineered world.
Geoengineering is the one way that you can potentially actually cool off the entire planet relatively quickly if necessary.
Samuel Thernstrom is a policy advisor at the Clean Air Task Force. Promoting research into how we might alter the climate is what he does.
It's not clear that emissions can be reduced quickly enough to actually avoid fairly serious scenarios.
Geoengineering, also called climate engineering, is the study of how to manipulate the planet's climate to counteract the effects of global warming. It can be simple, like painting your roof white so it absorbs less heat. The folks at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab say that if cool roof colours were applied to all eligible roofs and pavements in temperate and tropical regions, the total cooling effect could be equivalent to getting 300 million cars off the road every year for 20 years. At the higher tech end of the spectrum, some geoengineering plans are as complicated as launching trillions of 2-foot-wide transparent lenses a million miles into space to diffuse or divert sunlight before it gets to our overheated planet. Somewhere between those extremes, the most widely discussed idea is the one that could send sunset lovers a quiver worldwide.
The approach that's discussed most is to try and imitate a volcano.
The volcano that gets the most credit for the idea is Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines, whose huge eruption in 1991 created a cloud of sulfate particles big enough to cool the Earth by about 1 degree Fahrenheit for a few years. Michael McCracken is the chief scientist for climate change programs at the Climate Institute.
So that means it's scattering radiation, but it's also scattering some back to space.
What he's talking about is a principle called solar radiation management. One idea involves floating balloons high into the atmosphere to release light-reflecting sulfate particles.
Maybe I don't have to cover the whole globe with that volcanic aerosol. Maybe I can imitate a high-latitude volcano, and so just have the sulfate at high latitudes over the Arctic Ocean. We're going to lose the Arctic if we keep going on the path we are and don't do something. We're losing it.
What's the simplest and quickest way to save it?
Probably to reduce the amount of solar radiation going into the Arctic right now.
Another solar radiation management idea is to make more and brighter ocean clouds.
If you could make these clouds denser and therefore brighter, whiter, they would reflect more sunlight, and that it is, at least theoretically, possible to do that by spraying a very fine mist of salt water in the air, particles just the right size to help these clouds form and to help clouds that are forming become denser, whiter.
According to some estimates, 1,000 to 2,000 wind-powered, remote-controlled, seawater spraying ships would be enough to offset global warming for now. Another space-based proposal involves giant umbrellas or mirrors in orbit shading the Earth's surface. Needless to say, not everyone is crazy about all this.
Who sets the mirrors? Who establishes the angle? Who's going to, if you have an extraordinarily hot day in New York or in Paris, do you adjust the mirrors and to cool it down? And then what does that do to Africa when you make that adjustment? Who makes the decision?
Pat Mooney is one of the world's leading anti-geoengineering activists and the executive director of Canada's Etc. Group, an international technology watchdog. He helped convince the United Nations to impose a moratorium on geoengineering in 2010. And his opinion of technologies that would blast sulfates into the stratosphere to cool Europe and North America?
That could also knock the Asian monsoon off course, having it swing below South Asia, meaning that there'd be famine in South Asia, and affect Africa in ways that we're not even quite sure about.
Dr. Mooney says the only solution is emissions reductions.
We need to be putting on the brakes on some of the things we are doing, which are creating more greenhouse gases. Those are solutions. Those are real, credible solutions, and it is not too late.
If we'd started in the 1970s when it first came up, you could have cut emissions and tried to do that. But we've just going higher and higher and higher, and cutting back is proving hard to do.
The objections to geoengineering are not just scientific, they're political.
I don't have confidence that governments that have denied climate change for decades are actually going to be governments that will, in any way with integrity or intelligence, manage geoengineering. I don't trust them to control the planetary thermostat.
What would have to happen for you to be a convert?
We'd have to have governments that we can trust. I mean, when's the last time?
As soon as pigs fly.
Yeah.
But given that that's never going to happen, that means you're unwinnable.
I'm unwinnable to the idea of geoengineering as a solution to climate change.
But for geoengineering advocates, the scariest thing is to have no backup plan at all.
The whole problem is that we're already interfering a great deal with the global climate. We are, in fact, engaged in a vast global geoengineering experiment right now. It's just one that is entirely unintentional and uncontrolled.
So your opposition to geoengineering is really just an opposition to human hubris?
There is a sense of naive confidence that somehow just give us a chance and we'll do it right.
For his part, Michael McCracken hopes we will rise to the challenge and prevent catastrophic climate change by cutting emissions through geoengineering or with a combination of both.
I'm an engineer. I'm optimistic that we can do it. If you're a pessimist, it's too discouraging. I mean, you just have to.
All right.
We just have to keep working.
Josh Zepps, Energy Now.
One of the first real-world tests of geoengineering is supposed to take place in Britain within the next year. The Stratospheric Particle Injection for Climate Engineering Project, or SPICE, is a tethered balloon with a hose more than a dozen miles long to spray reflective particles into the upper atmosphere to cool the planet. The SPICE group had planned to test the technology this year at a much lower altitude, about 3,000 feet, but its advisory panel recommended they hold off. The group says April 2012 is now the earliest the test can take place. Otherwise, the hose may ice over. Now, before we go, we wanted to show you one more innovation, a really big innovation that uses rising hot air to potentially create clean energy to power cities. That's what's in this week's Energy Now Hot Zone. This is the solar tower designed by an Australian company, EnviroMission. It wants to build the 2,600-foot tower in the Arizona desert, becoming the world's second tallest structure. As hot air moves into the tower, it rises, basically creating a giant chimney. Along the way, all that swirling hot air turns 32 turbines, creating energy, which generators turn into electricity, enough to power 100,000 homes. It would cost $750 million to build, and a utility in California that wants to buy the electricity says construction of the solar tower could start next year. And that's it for this week's Energy Now. We want to know what you want to know, so reach out to us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. Search for us at Energy Now News. Plus, read our blogs and watch our extras on our website at energynow.com. I'm Thalia Shuras. See you next week.
Help us make Energy Now a continuing success in our second year. To keep growing, we want to form new partnerships with foundations and corporations who are equally concerned about America's energy future. Join us in bringing our message to more and more viewers. Please have your company or foundation contact Energy Now.